I walked into the credit union on a Tuesday morning in October, when the air still smelled like with smoke and wet leaves. The lobby was warmer than I expected. Too warm. Someone had turned the heat up early, and the scent of floor polish mixed with burnt coffee from the waiting area made my stomach turn slightly. I wore my work clothes, charcoal slacks, a pressed blouse, low heels that didn't make noise on tile. I'd taken a personal hour to handle what my stepfather Mark had described as a quick signature, nothing complicated. My mother sat in one of the vinyl chairs near the window, her purse clutched in her lap like a shield. She didn't look at me when I came in. That should have been the first sign, but I was already running through my afternoon meetings in my head, mentally rearranging logistics reports and vendor calls. Mark stood when he saw me. He always stood. He was good at that, at physical presence. 6'2", broad through the shoulders, with a kind of easy smile that made people think he was trustworthy. He wore a polo shirt and khakis, dressed like someone who'd just come from a golf course, though he hadn't held a steady job in 3 years. "There she is," he said, too loud for the space. "The woman of the hour." I didn't return the smile. "What am I signing?" "Just a refie on the house. Your mom and I talked about it. Rates dropped. Makes sense to lock it in. You co-signed the original mortgage, remember? Just need you to sign off on the new terms." I didn't remember co-signing anything. But my memory of that period, right after my father died, when I was 24 and drowning in grief, was hazy. Mark had married my mother 6 months after the funeral. Things moved fast. Papers were signed. I was told I was helping. "Let's just get it done," I said. The bank manager who met us in the small glass-walled office was a man named Henry Wallace. Mid-50s, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of Midwestern politeness that came with a steel spine underneath. He shook my hand, gestured for us to sit, and opened a manila folder on his desk. "Ms. Carter," he said, looking directly at me, not at Mark. "Thank you for coming in." "Of course." He slid a document across the desk. "Before we proceed, I need to verify a few details. This is standard protocol for loan modifications." "Sure." He turned the paper toward me. It was a signature card, the kind banks use for account verification. My name was typed at the top. Below it, 3 signatures, all supposedly mine. I looked at them. Then I looked again. None of them were my handwriting. The first was close. Someone had studied the way I looped my Y, the way I crossed my T, but the pressure was wrong. The slant was off. The second signature was worse, hurried. The third didn't even try. "This isn't me," I said. Henry Wallace nodded slowly. "That's what we suspected." The air in the room changed. I felt it before I understood it. My mother made a small sound, something between a cough and a gasp. Mark leaned back in his chair, his face carefully neutral. "What do you mean, suspected?" I asked. Henry folded his hands on the desk. "Miss Carter, are you aware that you currently have 3 active personal loans with this institution, totaling approximately $78,000? The floor dropped out from under me. Not physically, I was still sitting, still breathing, but something fundamental gave way. "No," I said. "That's not possible." 2 auto loans, 1 personal line of credit. All opened within the last 4 years. All in your name, using your social security number and employment information. I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry. I heard Mark shift in his chair. "There's been a mistake," Mark said, his voice taking on that reasonable, patient tone he used when he wanted to sound like the adult in the room. Emily helped us out a few years ago. This is probably just a clerical error. We can sort this out. Henry didn't look at him. Miss Carter, did you authorize these loans? No. Did you sign any loan documents for your parents in the last 4 years? No. And my thoughts were breaking apart. I didn't know about any of this. Henry reached into the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. He laid them out one by one. Loan applications. Credit card statements. Account opening forms. All of them had my name. My information. My supposed signature. This is identity theft, Henry said quietly. And based on the documentation we've reviewed, it appears to be systematic. Mark stood up. The movement was fast, aggressive. Now hold on. You're making some serious accusations here. I'm stating facts, Henry said, still calm. And I'm obligated by federal law to report this. Miss Carter, I need to ask, do you want to file a police report? I couldn't answer. I was staring at the papers, at the dates, at the amounts. $78,000. My name. My credit. My life. This is insane, Mark said. He was pacing now, his voice rising. Emily, tell him. You helped us. You knew about this. I didn't. You signed papers. You were there. I wasn't. Don't do this, he said, and his voice dropped, became something else. A warning. Don't make this into something it's not. My mother finally spoke. Emily. Her voice was thin, trembling. Please. Don't embarrass us. I looked at her. She was crying, or pretending to cry, I couldn't tell anymore. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. She looked small and fragile, and I felt, for a moment, the old pull. The instinct to protect her. To smooth things over. To be the good daughter. Then I looked at the signatures again. At the loans. At the theft of my name, my credit, my future. I want to file a report, I said. Mark moved fast. He crossed the distance between us in 2 steps, leaning over me, his hands on the armrests of my chair, caging me in. His face was inches from mine. You don't know what you're doing, he said. Henry was already standing, already reaching for the phone. Sir, step back. This is family business. Step back now, or I'm calling security. Mark didn't move. He stared at me, and I saw it then, the thing I'd been trained not to see. The rage. The entitlement. The absolute certainty that he could intimidate me into compliance. I didn't look away. Get away from me, I said. Security arrived 90 seconds later. 2 men, both calm, both professional. They escorted Mark out of the building. He went, but not quietly. He shouted the whole way, about betrayal, and lies and ungrateful children. My mother followed him, silent now, her face a mask. I sat in that glass office for another hour while Henry Wallace walked me through everything. Every document. Every account. Every fraudulent signature. He was kind, methodical. He made copies. He gave me numbers to call. He told me this wasn't my fault. I didn't believe him. When I finally left the building, the autumn air felt like ice. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called my brother. Daniel answered on the second ring. Hey, what's up? I tried to speak. Couldn't. Tried again. Emily? You okay? No, I said. I need help. Daniel arrived at my apartment that evening with a six-pack of beer and a yellow legal pad. He didn't hug me when I opened the door. He knew I didn't want that, but he looked at me the way he used to when we were kids and I'd fallen off my bike. Steady. Present. Unshakable. We sat at my kitchen table and I told him everything. He didn't interrupt. He took notes. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. 78,000, he finally said. That they admitted to. Henry said there might be more. Daniel set down his pen. He had our father's hands, broad, scarred from years of engine work and carpentry. He rubbed his face, then looked at me. You know what this means, he said. Yeah. You're going to have to go after them. Legally. Publicly. I know. Mom's going to make this hell. I know that too. He nodded. Picked up his beer, didn't drink it. I'm with you. Whatever you need. That was Daniel. No speeches. No drama. Just presence. I don't know where to start, I said. Attorney first. Someone who handles fraud. I'll ask around. And then? Then we find out how deep this goes. Laura Martinez's office was on the 32nd floor of a building in the Loop. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Minimalist furniture. A wall of lore books that probably cost more than my car. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with short dark hair and the kind of calm that came from seeing worse things than me. She listened to my story without taking notes. When I finished, she asked 3 questions. Do you have access to your credit reports? I pulled them yesterday. They're a mess. Do you have copies of the fraudulent documents? The bank gave me copies. Do your parents know you've contacted an attorney? Not yet. She nodded. Good. Don't tell them. Don't contact them at all. If they reach out, don't respond. Every communication from this point forward goes through me. Okay. Emily. She leaned forward. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Your parents are going to say things about you. They're going to try to control the narrative. They'll tell your extended family, your friends, your church that you're lying, that you're unstable, that you're attacking them. They'll play the victim. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my mother's face in the bank. The trembling hands. The tears. Yes, I said. Are you sure? Because if you start this and back down, it makes everything harder. It signals that their tactics work. I'm not backing down. Laura studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right. Let's get to work. The full scope of it took 3 weeks to uncover. 78,000 was just the beginning. There were credit cards I'd never opened, 6 of them, maxed out, all in collections. There were personal loans from online lenders, payday advance companies, even a pawn shop in Indiana. There was an auto loan for a truck I'd never seen. There was a home equity line of credit taken out against their house using my income for qualification. Total damage, $143,000. All of it in my name. All of it destroying my credit, my financial history, the stability I'd spent a decade building. Laura worked through it like surgery. Document by document. Statement by statement. She filed affidavits with the credit bureaus. She contacted the FTC. She requested forensic handwriting analysis. She subpoenaed bank records. And then she found the spreadsheet. It was on Mark's laptop, seized during the initial fraud investigation. A single Excel file, password protected, meticulously maintained. It had everything. My salary. My promotion dates. My travel schedule. My credit limits. My account numbers. Even notes about my spending habits, my work hours, when I'd be out of town. He'd been tracking me for years. This is premeditation, Alora said, sliding a printed copy across her desk. This isn't opportunistic fraud. This is systematic, calculated identity theft. And this, as she pointed to a column labeled Income Verification, shows he was using your employment information to qualify for loans he knew he'd never repay. I stared at the spreadsheet. At my life, reduced to data points. To numbers he could exploit. There's more, Laura said. She pulled out another document. Your father's life insurance policy. The one that was supposed to be split between you and Daniel. I knew about that policy. $50,000 each. It was supposed to help us get started, buy homes, build futures. My father had been specific about it. It was cashed out 6 months after your father died, Alora said. The entire amount, $100,000, went into a joint account controlled by your mother and Mark. You and Daniel never received anything. I couldn't speak. I'm sorry, Alora said quietly. I know that's not just financial. That's legacy. That's your father's final gift, stolen. They started calling 2 days later. First my mother. Sobbing voicemails about betrayal and family, and how could I do this to them? Then Mark, calm at first, trying to reason with me, then angry, then threatening. Then aunts and uncles I barely spoke to. Then people from church. The narrative was simple. I was mentally unstable. I'd had a breakdown at work. I was making false accusations to get attention. They were worried about me. They just wanted to help. I didn't answer. I didn't respond. I saved every message and forwarded them to Laura. Daniel fielded the calls that came to him. He was blunt. She's not crazy. They stole from her. It's documented. Back off. Most people didn't believe him. Family loyalty ran deep in our mother's side. Blood was blood. You didn't air dirty laundry. You forgave. You moved on. Except they weren't asking for forgiveness. They were asking for silence. The confrontation happened on a Saturday in November. Laura advised against it. Let the legal process handle it. Don't give them an opportunity to twist your words. But I needed to see them. Needed them to know I knew. Needed to hear them try to explain. Daniel came with me. So did a family friend who'd been a paralegal before retiring, a woman named Judith, sharp as glass, who agreed to be a witness. We drove to their house in the early afternoon. The house my father had bought. The house I'd supposedly co-signed a mortgage for. The house that was now collateral for their lies. Mark answered the door. He looked tired. Smaller, somehow. My mother stood behind him in the hallway. We need to talk, I said. You're not welcome here, Mark said. I'm not asking for an invitation. I'm giving you one chance to explain. He started to close the door. Daniel put his hand on it, held it open. Not aggressive. Just immovable. Let them in, my mother said softly. We sat in the living room. The same room where we'd had Christmas dinners, birthday parties, The wake after my father's funeral. It looked the same. Felt like a stranger's house. I laid the spreadsheet on the coffee table. Then the loan documents. Then the bank statements. Explain this, I said. Mark didn't look at the papers. We needed help. You have a good job. We were going through a rough patch. You stole my identity. We borrowed your credit. There's a difference. No, I said. There isn't. My mother was crying again. Real tears this time, I thought. Or maybe I just wanted them to be real. We were going to pay it back, she said. We just needed time. For years, I said. You've had for years. You didn't pay back anything. You took out more. We had expenses. Medical bills. The house. You had my father's life insurance. $100,000. Where did that go? Silence. Where did it go? I asked again. Mark stood up. This is harassment. Get out of my house. It's not your house, Daniel said quietly. It's Dad's house. And you've been using Emily's credit to keep it. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I pulled the deed records. I talked to the mortgage company. I know what you did. Mark's face went red. You self-righteous. Sit down, Judith said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Sit down and be quiet. Something in her tone made him hesitate. Saturday. Judith looked at my mother. Susan, you're going to be charged as an accessory. You signed some of these documents. You benefited from the fraud. You knew. That makes you complicit. My mother shook her head. I didn't know it was wrong. Mark said Emily agreed. He said she wanted to help. That's a lie, I said. I didn't know, she said again, and I saw it then, the thing I'd been avoiding my whole adult life. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't helpless. She'd made a choice. She'd chosen him over me. Over truth. Over basic decency. She'd chosen this. You knew, I said. You've always known. The restraining order was filed the following Monday. Mark violated it on Wednesday. He showed up at my apartment at 11 at night, pounding on the door, shouting about betrayal and lawyers and how I was destroying the family. A neighbor called the police. He was gone by the time they arrived, but the report was filed. The violation was documented. On Friday, I came home to find my car keyed. Deep gouges down both sides, the word liar scratched into the hood. Laura filed for an emergency hearing. The first court date was in December. The courthouse in our county was old, built in the 30s, with marble floors and high ceilings that made every sound echo. I wore a suit. Laura wore a suit. Daniel sat in the gallery. His presence a steady weight behind me. Mark and Susan had hired an attorney, a man named Roger Fielding, mid-60s, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who specialized in making victims look like villains. He was good at his job. Your Honor, a Fielding said, and my clients are loving parents who are devastated by these accusations. Miss Carter has, unfortunately, been under significant stress at work. She's had documented mental health struggles. Objection, Laura said. There's no documentation of any mental health struggles. That's a fabrication. Sustained, a Judge Evelyn Porter said. She was in her 50s, a former prosecutor, known for her intolerance of theatrics. Mr. Fielding, stick to facts. Of course, Your Honor. The facts are simple. My clients made some financial decisions that Ms. Carter now regrets co-signing for. But at the time, she was fully aware and willing to help her family. That's a lie, I said quietly. Laura put a hand on my arm. Not restraining. Granding. Ms. Matiners, the judge said. Your evidence. Laura stood and presented her case like she was building a house. Foundation first. Bank records showing accounts opened with forged signatures. Affidavits from handwriting experts. The spreadsheet, entered into evidence. Emails between Mark and a loan officer at the credit union, a man named Nathan Brooks, discussing how to use my employment information without my knowledge. Brooks had flipped. Faced with federal fraud charges, he'd cooperated fully. He gave Laura everything, emails, recorded phone calls, even notes from meetings where Mark had explicitly stated I didn't know about the loans. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Laura said. This was systematic, premeditated identity theft. And the evidence is irrefutable. Fielding tried to recover. He put my mother on the stand, let her cry, let her talk about how much she loved me, how this was all a terrible mistake. Laura's cross-examination was surgical. Mrs. Reynolds, you signed some of these loan applications, correct? Yes, but... And you used your daughter's social security number to do so? Mark said it was okay. Did you ask Emily if it was okay? Silence. Mrs. Reynolds, did you ask your daughter for permission to use her identity? No. Did you tell her you were opening accounts in her name? No. Did you make any payments on these loans? We tried. Did you make any payments? No. Laura sat down. Judge Porter took less than an hour to rule. Restraining order extended. Criminal charges recommended. Assets frozen pending investigation. Restitution ordered. Mark was arrested in the courthouse parking lot. The trial took place in March. It wasn't dramatic. Real trials rarely are. It was procedural, methodical, exhausting. Days of testimony. Weeks of waiting. Stacks of documents. Endless repetition. But the outcome was never really in doubt. Mark was convicted on 14 counts of identity theft, fraud, and forgery. He was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, with restitution totaling $143,000 plus penalties and interest. Susan took a plea deal. 2 years probation, restitution, community service. She maintained, even in her plea statement, that she'd been manipulated. That she hadn't understood. I stopped listening. The year after the trial was strange. My credit was restored, slowly. Laura helped me navigate the process, dispute after dispute, affidavit after affidavit, proof that I was the victim, not the perpetrator. It took months. But eventually, my score climbed back. The black marks faded. My job stabilized. I'd been promoted again, to regional director. The company had been supportive, once they understood what was happening. My boss, a woman named Patricia who'd been through her own family nightmare, was quietly fierce in her advocacy. She made sure I had the flexibility I needed for court dates and meetings. She made sure my career didn't suffer for someone else's crimes. The community response was complicated. Some people believed me immediately, were horrified, were supportive. Some people didn't believe me until the conviction. Some people never believed me, still thought I was exaggerating. That I should have forgiven, that family was family. I learned to live with that ambiguity. People were going to believe what they wanted. I couldn't control that. I could only control my own story, my own truth. Daniel became my family in a way he'd always been but now felt more essential. We had dinner every Sunday. We didn't talk about Mark and Susan. We talked about work, about his carpentry projects, about the Cubs, about nothing and everything. He was building a house, slowly, in his spare time. A craftsman bungalow with real hardwood floors and custom trim. He showed me the plans. Asked my opinion on paint colors. It was ordinary. It was healing. I started speaking publicly about financial fraud in the fall. A local nonprofit that worked with abuse survivors asked if I'd be willing to share my story at a fundraiser. I almost said no. The idea of standing in front of strangers, talking about the worst year of my life, felt impossible. But Laura encouraged me. You have something people need to hear. And you tell it without falling apart. That matters. So I did it. I stood on a small stage in a hotel conference room and told 100 people what had happened to me. I kept it factual. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just explained the mechanics of identity theft, the warning signs, the steps to take if it happened to them. Afterward, a woman approached me. She was in her 50s, well-dressed, composed. She shook my hand and said, "And my son did this to me." I didn't know I could fight back. Thank you. I did 3 more talks that year. Then 10. Then I was invited to speak at a banking conference, at a legal symposium, at a community college. It became something. Not a career, but a purpose. I didn't speak to my mother for 2 years. She tried, occasionally. Cards on my birthday. Emails around Christmas. Always the same message. I'm sorry. I love you. I didn't mean for this to happen. Can we please talk? I didn't respond. Daniel did. Once. He sent her a single email. I'm not stopping Emily from contacting you. She's choosing not to. Respect that. She didn't write again after that. On a Tuesday morning in October, 3 years after everything started, I walked into the credit union where it had all begun. The lobby looked the same. Smelled the same. Floor polish, burnt coffee, the faint scent of autumn leaves from the doors that kept opening and closing. The heat was on too high. I was there to close my final account with them, to move everything to a new bank, a fresh start. But mostly I was there because I needed to see the space again. Needed to finish something I couldn't quite name. Henry Wallace met me in the lobby. He looked older, grayer. But his handshake was firm. "Miss Carter," he said. "It's good to see you." "You too." He walked me back to his office, the same glass-walled room, the same desk. "We Saturday." He pulled out the paperwork for the account closure. "I followed your case," he said while I signed. "I'm glad it turned out the way it did." "Me too." "And I heard you speaking about fraud prevention now." "Yeah. It's been good. Feels like something useful came out of it." He nodded. "You handled it with a lot of grace." "That's not easy." I didn't know how to respond to that. Grace felt like the wrong word. Survival felt more accurate. Endurance. But maybe there wasn't much difference. I signed the last form. He processed the closure. We shook hands again, and I walked out of the building into bright October sunlight. The air was cool, crisp, carrying that same smell of wood smoke and damp leaves. I stood in the parking lot for a moment, just breathing. 3 years ago, I'd sat in my car in this exact spot and called my brother, unable to speak, my world collapsing. Today, I got in my car, started the engine, and drove to work. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even closure, not really. It was just forward motion. And that, I'd learned, was enough. Daniel called me that evening. "Hey, you busy this weekend?" "Not particularly." "Why?" "I'm finishing the trim work on the bungalow. Thought you might want to come see it." "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." "Cool. I'll make dinner. Nothing fancy." "Sounds good." There was a pause. Then Daniel said, "Are you doing okay?" "Yeah," I said. And I meant it. "I'm doing okay." "Good." We hung up. I sat in my apartment, my clean, quiet, safe apartment, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the absence of pain. Not the erasure of what had happened. But a stillness that came from knowing I'd survived. That I'd told the truth. That I'd protected myself even when I was told protection meant betrayal. I'd chosen myself. And the world hadn't ended. I opened my laptop and checked my calendar. I had a speaking engagement next month at a women's business network. Then another one at a university in December. My inbox had 3 new requests. People wanted to hear the story. Needed to hear it. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Because it said, this can happen. And if it does, you can fight back. You can survive. You can build something new from the wreckage. I closed the laptop and made tea. Sat by the window. Watched the light fade over the city. Somewhere, my mother was living her probation. Somewhere, Mark was in prison, 3 years into his sentence. Somewhere, people still believed I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving, too willing to destroy family. I didn't think about them much anymore. I thought about Daniel's bungalow. About the non-profit work. About the next promotion at work, the one Patricia had hinted at. About the life I was building, slowly, deliberately, with people who'd earned their place in it. I thought about my father, the real one, the one who'd wanted me to have a future, who'd tried to protect me even after he was gone. I liked to think he'd be proud. Not of the pain. Not of the battle. But of the fact that I'd stood up. That I'd refused to disappear. That I'd survived with my integrity intact. The tea cooled in my hands. The city lights came on, one by one. I sat there until dark, not thinking about anything in particular. Just being. Just existing in a life I'd fought to keep. And that was enough. That was everything.